walks by. Casting its shadow, weaving a spell. Long gray clothes, twinkling bell. Never talking, just keeps walking. Causing his magic. Evil power disappears. Demons worry when the wizard is near. He turns tears into joy. Everyone's happy when the wizard walks by. Never talking, just keep walking. Spreading his magic. Sun is shining, time to come by. All the people.
And good evening, Thunder Wizards. So, welcome back to me. I've been gone for at least 2 weeks, and I'm back from my trip. And so I'm going to share some of my thoughts, as I always do, with you. And today we're going to be focusing on facing your fears. And, this is definitely, I say this kind of thing all the time. This is definitely the most prevalent issue. Really. Really. Everything else that we talk about and everything that I help you with and whatever it is, it always boils down to this, is taking action. And a big part of my job is to help you have the courage to take action regardless of how you feel. Really, that's it. That is the most spiritual thing I can tell you. One thing that is the key to success, the key to happiness, the key to relationships is to take action regardless of your feelings. And one of the biggest emotions, experiences that we have that can block us from taking action is fear. And it's amazing because, you think about the things that we do every day that you should be afraid of. Driving your car. You're driving your car, if you drive on the freeway, you're driving 65 miles per hour. What is that, 100 kilometers an hour? I just spent 2 weeks for kilometers and the metric system, and I didn't know what I was looking at most of the time. You're going really fast, and in many cases there is nothing that is preventing the other car from simply driving across the road. I know because I did it. Drive across the road and head straight for you. There were times I forgot I was supposed to drive on the left side of the road when I was in Australia. And I'd get on the road and I'd start driving and there'd be a car coming at me. Oh, crap, I'm on the wrong side of the road. And they must have wondered what the hell was wrong with that person. Or maybe they just go, there goes an American. But, when you get in your car and you drive, there is a real, not an insignificant chance that you could die. It's dangerous. Driving a car is dangerous. You know, and there's all kinds of other things that we do every day as well that's very dangerous. But we don't think twice about it. And it's because we don't have any fear. So we're able to take action. I'm able to get into my speeding metallic land rocket and drive down, you know, a crowded freeway. And again, you know, and the thing is yeah, how many people are going to follow the rules of the road? The only thing that's keeping the other person on the other side of the road is their choice. They simply choose not to drive on in the United States on the left side of the road. And all it would take is for them to decide to swerve over right in front of me. You know, think about it. You're going right, all it takes. So we face death every day. But because we're not afraid, we do it. And yet things that seem so minuscule, you know, taking action on going after that job. I mean, asking that girl out. Boy, she's right there. All you have to do is just say, hey, do you want to go out? She can either say yes or no. Your life will not be, you know, nothing will happen to your physical life whatsoever. And yet, we can't do it. Putting up that website, starting that that new business, moving to someplace new. I'm going to be talking a lot about that. We're so I mean, it's not just like we're afraid. We're deathly afraid of it. Telling your partner how you feel. Being comfortable with your partner having uncomfortable feelings. Being with yourself, having uncomfortable feelings and not doing something to get out of it, taking a drug, drinking, you know, watching porn, playing video games, you know, eating a big, you know, bucket of Kentucky Fried Chicken and ice cream or something. You know, these are the kinds of actions that we take to avoid our feelings. So it's amazing, you know, the things that we are afraid to do and the things that we should be afraid of that we don't have a problem doing. So we're going to be talking about fear and, you know, hopefully I'll be empowering you to take a look at your fear. So before we go any further, what I'd like to do is show you a clip from something that I saw just recently, which I found very empowering. I mean, I watched this guy and I said, there's no excuse. There's no excuse for me to be afraid of anything. And I'm in a really drastic life change, and I'll talk about that, where I'm about to take some prolonged and big steps that will put me into a prolonged state of insecurity. And I'm going to jump off a cliff, and, you know, once I'm committed to that, you know, there's no turning back from that. Well, it'll take a lot of effort to turn back. So bear that in mind as we watch this guy, who I think has probably the largest balls of any human that's ever lived. Take a look at this.
Alex Honnold is the foremost free soloist in the world. He has free soloed routes that no one else can. To free solo means to climb without ropes or safety equipment. One false move, one slip, and it's over.
The risk in free soloing is always to fall off and fall to your death. I mean, that's pretty straightforward.
To me, the big dream has always been free soloing El Cap. That is the culmination of anything I can imagine.
El Cap is monumental, 3,000 feet of sheer granite. Free soloing it would be one of the greatest accomplishments in the history of climbing.
Alex was going to do the climb with or without us, but we decided that to be able to live with ourselves filming it, we needed to set certain guidelines. First, Alex's safety was always going to be the priority. And second, we needed to protect the integrity of his experience.
To be able to move forward on this film, the makeup of the crew was critical. They had to be elite professional climbers who understood what Alex was doing. Their interactions with Alex had to be carefully managed, and they had to remain completely neutral about Alex's decision to make or not make the attempt to free solo El Cap. Even though we thought through every scenario carefully, it was still difficult to film Alex.
So that dude, in my opinion, that guy has the biggest balls of any human being. I mean, I can't even watch that. Some of the parts that, I only took bits and pieces of that. But some parts of that thing I couldn't watch. I mean, my sphincter would tighten up, so bad. My back would just, I can't tolerate. Part of it is because I have a fear of heights. I could never do that. I could never be a free climber. I don't think I could ever jump out of a plane and skydive. I don't think I could do it. Now, skydiving, is relatively a lot safer than that. I mean, that guy, seriously, you saw where he was at. I mean, if he sneezed, it would have been it. It would have been over. 3,000 feet. 3,000 feet. That takes some serious balls. That guy clearly overcame his fear. Now, he probably has a lot less fear than I do when it comes to climbing, but if you watch that, I don't even remember the name of it, you watch that particular video, you'll hear him talk about some climbs that he's made where he's panicked and he still got through. So I can't even imagine what that would be like. I mean, I would freeze up. Oh my God, I would not be able to function. Oh, I would hate it. It would be horrible. The few times that I've done, some climbing nowhere near like that, and I remember being in situations where I was panicking, and I don't know that my life was on the line like that, but it was really scary. So I'm sitting here in this part of my life, and I'm about to, in the next 6 to 7 months, I'm going to make some huge life changes, which, as you'll see, are not. It's not like I'm going to change and it'll be different. I'm going to be in that, like those periods where he was, on the side of that cliff and he's looking around and he's like, okay, what do I do next? And there's, I'm going to be living in something similar to that for I don't even know how long. And so as I'm facing these things and I'm thinking about it, I watch that and I go, oh, what have I got to be afraid of? I mean, seriously. I don't have to worry about that. So I want to talk to you about that. Taking fear, taking action, regardless of your fears. And as I said, this is the biggest issue that I see when I work with clients and when I work with apprentices. Because fear is not always rational. Now, that guy is facing an actual fear, not a made-up fear that comes out of our unconscious. This is an actual fear. According to, I don't know if it was a psychologist or a doctor or whoever it was, but I heard it from somebody else who said that, according to some so-called professional, human beings are only born with 3 innate fears. The first one is a fear of heights, a fear of falling. That guy's facing that actual innate fear. The other one is the fear of loud noises. And the third one is the fear of fast-moving objects. These fears are not something that are learned. They are ingrained in us. And even as an infant, you will have a fear response to each one of those things. Every other fear is learned. For instance, again, I was talking earlier about, the insanity of getting into this high-powered metallic land rocket and going 65, 75 miles an hour, and there is nothing preventing you from being struck by the car coming in the other direction. We should be afraid of that, but we have this ability to drive down. We can train ourselves to go that fast and know that that's coming right at us, and even if it's only feet away, we have this belief that we will be okay. And all it would take is for that person at the last minute to fall asleep or sneeze or decide to kill themselves, and it would be over. I experienced this when I was in Australia, because I'm not used to. I think I've only driven on the left side of the road once 35 years ago when I was in Australia. But, I was driving down highways, and, especially if the road is curving, as the person is coming, which would be on the right side of the street, even though I'm on the left side, my initial reaction was total fear. Oh my God! Because my body has been trained to, if somebody's on the right side of the road, they're going to hit you. And I have to tell myself, it's okay, I'm on the left or on the right. It took so much effort to do that. I forgot what I was saying. But what I'm running into always, myself included, I'm no different than anybody else, is that we have these crippling fears to do things like put up a website, start a new business. If somebody's doing the astrology certification, where do we have that? If somebody's doing my astrology certification, up there at the top, astrologycertification.thunderwizard.com. You've never done an astrology reading before and you're scared to death, you can't bring yourself to do it. And I say, so what? You make mistakes, just go do it. Now, I've said that because I started and I made mistakes, and I learned that, that's how I learn. And most of the time I think I'm doing a horrible job. The client doesn't think that at all. But the only thing that stops you from doing it is the fear. And the fear can be crippling. It can be as intense as I can imagine, with those pictures of that guy stuck up in that rock cleft, thousands of feet on the side of a cliff with no rope, and him looking around and looking kind of perplexed. I would be coming out of my skin. I would be crying. I don't know. I think just my fear reaction itself would cause me to fall. Quite certain it would. To my death. But we react to these things, asking a girl out, whatever it is, we react to these things as though we are that guy on the side of a cliff about to fall to our death. It can be so crippling. When we're going through health challenges, like let's say somebody wants to, they want to go to the gym, they want to lose weight, they want to stop a habit, smoking, sugar, alcohol, drugs, whatever it is. That stopping that can be really intense. People, because we want to feel good. This is what I'm trying to say. We want to feel good, and we don't want to feel bad. And so, in order to deal with a bad feeling, we'll take an action that is actually very harmful and very destructive to us, but because we don't have any negative feelings associated with it, we will take the negative action, as opposed to taking the action that is good for us, even though there's a lot of fear attached to it. So let me go over again, because this is my favorite subject, and this has everything to do with this. My belief, which I have proven to myself and which I have seen proven in the lives of my students and my apprentices who have followed my instructions, is that we are born with an innate soul desire. Your soul desire is the reason that you were incarnated. Now, unlike the Christian religion that will say, God has a plan and everything works out, so you're told not to think about what's happening to you or what you're doing. Just read the Bible and, believe in Jesus and everything will be okay. And if, this happens and you become poor or you become sick or, well, that's just God's will and God has a plan for you. And part of God's plan may include you being sick and miserable and in pain and lonely and all of that. And well, we just trust in God. And I'm saying that's not how destiny works. You have come into this life with a desire that you implanted in your own soul before you were incarnated. And that is why you are here. Now, you might say, well, if that's the case, then why am I so miserable? It's a very good question. If in fact you are miserable or you are less than fulfilled or happy in your life, assuming that you're not following your soul desire, it means that you took actions based on avoiding negative feelings. You took actions based on your fear. So your fear may feel like you are going to die any minute when in actuality there's nothing that's threatening your life. You're not risking falling off, falling to your death. You're not risking some loud sound happening near you. You don't have any risk of something flying at your head. Those are the only three fears that we have. So what is the fear? The fear is still the fear of death. You're afraid that you will not survive. And where do we get this? When we are little infants, when we are little toddlers, not so much infants, when we're toddlers, 3, 4 years old, we have to figure out how to keep our primary caregivers happy with us. Because if they're not, there's in other cultures, in previous times, in primitive cultures, sometimes toddlers and infants are left out to die, especially if they're sick. Because people didn't have the ability to deal with that. And you couldn't, especially, back in caveman days, you couldn't have a malformed child, with a limp or something like that, because you got to be able to run away from the saber-toothed tigers or from the other tribes or whatever. And so they would put the kid out and let it die. So there's a real need, a real survival need as a toddler to get the love and approval of your primary caregivers, because they're the ones that are giving you the food and the warmth and the shelter and the protection. And without them, you will die. So you learn, if you live in a dysfunctional home where you have alcoholic parents or, some other kind of messed up parental scenario, and there's a whole spectrum of that. We all have some dysfunction on some level. But if you live in a home where there's some major dysfunction, then you learn how to try and predict what they're going to want from you. And if what they want to do is abuse you, if they want to tell you you're no good or that they don't love you, then you learn to take that on. And so you wonder why people go throughout their whole lives feeling insecure and feeling and hating themselves, feeling that they're not worthy. And, for years and years and years, for decades, they'll die. There are people in their 80s and 90s who die with that feeling. And that feeling was created when they were toddlers because of whatever their life situation. And it doesn't make rational sense that, you would think once they become self-sufficient, once they get to their teens and they're able to take care of themselves, that they would be able to say, you know what, I am okay, I am good, and I'm going to discard that. We don't have the tools within us to do that. We are programmed, and once we are programmed, that programming stays with us unless we take continuous and severe actions to retrain our brain. And it's not an easy thing to do. Takes a lot of work and a lot of chutzpah. Because in order to change that, remember, this is a survival technique. The survival technique of that little 4-year-old kid who says to himself or herself that they choose to believe and accept that they are worthless and unlovable because if they think differently, their parents might reject them. Because their parents have their own issues and they project onto their kids, you're worthless, you're no good, blah, blah, blah. I had an interaction with somebody online, which, as I do, somebody left a comment, and I responded to some of those comments with a video, and at least one person really got their panties in a bunch over that. And we talked back and forth, and it was an interesting experience for me because, to my knowledge, I wasn't personally attacking this person, but I was asking questions. What do you think about this, and how do you feel about that? And the judgments that were coming at me, one in particular was, you're not there yet, it's okay. That one stood out to me because that's what my father said to me. My father said that to me once verbatim. He said, you're not there yet. And what's sad about that, I remember when that happened, I could feel that my father was trying to compliment me. His innate feeling was that he wanted to say, congratulations, Mike, you really pulled it off. You should be proud of yourself. He couldn't do that. So the best he could say was, well, you're not there yet. That's the best he could do. So when I read that comment, I thought to myself, wow, this person must have had a parent who said the same thing to them. So they're projecting it onto me, saying the same thing to me. You're not there yet. It's okay, that I've got all these problems and whatever. And this programming is incredibly insidious, and it's difficult to get over. This is why, by the way, self-talk rarely works. Affirmations rarely work. In fact, can you think of anybody? And I'm not saying that it can't work, but more often than not, telling yourself, I am a good person, I am valuable, I am rich, I am successful. If you think about it over the long period of time, it doesn't always take. In fact, more often than not, it doesn't take. And that's because that self-talk is going against the programming that was laid down at toddler age, at 3 and 4 years old. 3 and 4 years old, if that person has told themselves, and because they can feel, again, the parents don't have to say it. Little kids can feel it. If they can feel that their mother or their father thinks that they're worthless and unlovable, in order to align with their parents so that they can stay safe, they will adopt that. And they do it to preempt them. So this is another thing that happens. You ever done this? Have you ever known people, or have you yourself broken up with somebody or gotten rid of a friend preemptively? Because you're afraid they're going to break up with you, so you break up with them first? This is what this is, the negative self-talk of you're not worthy, you're not valuable. You can hear that I'm making a conscious decision to not say it in the first person. Have you noticed that? But when somebody has this going on, what they're doing is that they're preempting what they think other people are going to be saying about them. Because what we do is we take that toddler experience, which is we're preempting our parents who may think negative things about us, and so we start thinking that way about ourselves so that they don't. And it's like saying, hey, listen, you don't have to tell me that. I'm going to tell myself that. I don't want to burden you, and you're right, and we're together, and I'm part of you, and I agree with you, and so you'll love me and accept me because I'm agreeing with you that, whatever the negative feeling is. That's what's happening. And we take that into our lives. And so when you run into people who can't connect with others, who can't have relationships with others, who, despite their best efforts, say passive-aggressive or destructive things and destroy relationships, it's because they're preempting that. And worse than that, they seek out people who will, like their parents, vibrate on that same level. If they've been programmed to believe that they're not good enough for whatever reason, they will attract others who will also give out that same message. And what's irrational about it is, again, let's talk about what fears are. So that child who has, that infant who has 3 innate fears, the fear of heights, which is really the fear of falling, the fear of falling, the fear of loud noises, and the fear of fast-moving objects. Once that infant, if there is a loud noise, kaboom, that child will have a fear response. And then once, the sound doesn't continue, then the child will realize, oh, the fear, the danger is gone, and the fear will dissipate. Just like when we're on the road and we have a near miss with somebody, that's really, you think about it, somebody almost hits you going on the freeway. That should be enough, rationally, for somebody to say, I'm never getting on the freeway again. Even if it happens once, I'm dead. It's over. I'm not doing that. It's not worth it. Like me, I will not climb mountains because all it takes is one fall and you're dead, and that's good enough for me. So, but what it means is that once the danger has passed, we are wired to then lose the fear. But we don't do that. We hold on to fears for our entire life. So when somebody's parents have died, in my case, my parents are dead, or when somebody has grown up and is no longer living with their parents, they still hold on to this fear, the fear of not being good enough. And they fight with themselves, and they sabotage themselves going after what gives them the greatest joy, which will also bring you your greatest success, by the way. And that is an irrational thing to do, to continuously sabotage yourself for decades when the danger is gone. When you're a little kid and you're dependent on your parents, the danger is real. Mommy and daddy might hit you. They might say bad things to you. They might make you go to bed without dinner. They might choose to kick you out. They might choose not to feed you or clothe you. Those are very real fears as long as you're in that situation. But once you're out of that situation, that fear is no longer rational. Just like if you have a near miss on the highway and now I'm in my home, and in my home there is no highway, to be afraid of the sound of cars would be irrational because I'm not driving my car down the road right now. I'm in my house. But we live with these irrational fears, and it's the fear of death. All of your fears, if you're afraid of talking to somebody, if you're afraid of starting that business, you're afraid of taking action to go fulfill yourself, that is the fear of death. It is the same fear that I would have if I was like that solo free climber who's on the side of a cliff. I would have such intense fear in that situation. That is what's happening to you unconsciously every time you sabotage yourself. Every time you pick up that crack pipe, every time you pick up that glass of vodka, every time you pick up that tub of ice cream, you're operating from that fear of death, and it's an irrational fear. However, the fear itself won't kill you. The feeling itself will not destroy you. And we have an irrational understanding. We're afraid of the feeling. We're more afraid of the feeling than the actual reality. So you're afraid of asking that girl out. You have that crippling fear of asking that girl out. If you go and ask that girl out, you might be shaking, you might stutter, and it might be horrifically frightening, and she may reject you, and then you'll still be alive. You won't be dead. You'll be alive. You might still be embarrassed and afraid and whatever else, but you won't be dead, which is really what you're afraid of. You're afraid of death. It all comes down to that. I'm aware of this because, as you know, some of you may already know, where I'm at in my life. I made the decision a while ago that I wanted to move to Australia, and I took this 2-week trip to go see if, in fact, this was someplace I wanted to live. Now, being the being the typical American who thinks that the whole world, we own the whole world, it never dawned on me to investigate whether or not I can actually move there. It didn't even dawn on me. I just thought I'd show up and say, hey, I'm moving here. And Australia would say, okay, here you go. Here's your Australian citizenship, or here's your residency. It never dawned on me that they might have their own feelings about that. So I found out that it's not that easy, at least on the surface. In fact, Australia's got some really restrictive immigration, especially for people over the age of 49. And, what's been frustrating, let me just vent a little bit. What's been frustrating is as I'm talking to, migration assistants and looking into, I still have a lot more to do, but the kinds of questions that they're asking me are based on assumptions that don't apply to me. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to prevent people coming in who will be a drain on their economy, take jobs away from native Australians, or create a business which will, they'll take money out of the Australian economy, whereas they want to support a native Australian to create businesses. I'm self-sufficient. I have my own stream of income. It doesn't matter where I am in the world. I have a stream of income, which is all this stuff above me here. So it doesn't matter. I would only be bringing money to them. They also don't like people over 49 because I am assuming the assumption is that you'll get old and sick and be a drain on their healthcare system. So, all of these assumptions, I don't fit into any of them. I mean, even though I'm 55, I'm in very good health. There's no immediate danger of me getting sick of anything. I'm probably in better health than most people in their 30s and 40s. I'm not going to be taking jobs from somebody else. I'm not going to, have a boss. I'm not going to start a business where I'll be charging Australians money. I don't fit into any of that. I only bring money to them. And it's frustrating me because the mindset is there aren't even any questions that fit who I am. So they're automatically trying to put me into one box or another that doesn't apply to me. It's very frustrating. So I'm finding that, and so the bottom line of that is that, oh my gosh, I might not be able to just snap my fingers and move here. In fact, it might be really hard work. Might not even happen. I might get rejected if I try and apply for, residency or a longer visa or something like that. So what I'm finding out, though, is that I can pretty much go anywhere I want to go. Every place I've looked at, I can go, sometimes even without any visa whatsoever. I can just show up with my passport and I can stay there for 3 months. So I'm thinking about, gosh, that kind of makes things interesting because what I'm going to be doing here, since my family's gone, my parents are dead, I don't really have connection with my brother and my sister. I don't have any friends, really. All my friends have their own thing going on, and I don't have a relationship anymore. My fiance died a year ago, so I have no real relationship holding me here. I don't have a job holding me here. I have nothing holding me here. The two things that I have holding me here is I have a lease on this house that I'm renting, which will be done in June. And I have a lease on a car. So if I get rid of my lease here and I get rid of my lease on my car, there is literally nothing that will hold me down here. Nothing. I don't have to stay here. So my plan is to let my lease run out. And while that's happening, I'm going to sell off all of my surfboards, sell or give away all of my possessions except for what I can put into a suitcase and a couple of surfboards. So surfing equipment and just what I need, the clothes that I need, and a laptop. I'm going to trade in my desktop here for a laptop, and I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing from wherever I go. So that means I might be bouncing around with no home for 3 months at a time. Now, I would feel safe if I could say, oh, I'm moving to Australia, and then I go and I start building a life there. But I can't do that under the current situation unless, something changes, I'm going to have to leave every 3 months. And if I want to go spend time in New Zealand, same thing. I can stay there for 3 months and then I'm going to have to leave. So I could do things like bounce around from Australia to New Zealand to Tahiti to Hawaii to, these are a few places that I'd like to go stay at. And that sounds like a lot of fun, but there's no security there in terms of emotional security. As soon as I start connecting and make friends, I'm going to have to up and leave. So there's no permanency there. And the feeling of that is that feeling that I get when I look at this guy who's perched on the side of a mountain. And he doesn't have any foothold. How's he going to get to the next, to get up on top of that mountain? And being 55 years old in 10 years, who knows what my health is going to be like? Maybe I'll be super healthy. Maybe I'll start to get old. We don't know yet. It would be nice to have a place to live and retire and all that. But if I jump off the cliff and I don't get some kind of a residency or something somewhere else. And the truth is, I don't want to come back here. That may change, but I don't think I want to live in the United States anymore. And I don't want to live in California anymore. The thought of coming back here after traveling around for a few years and, starting all over again and, at 60 or 65, renting a house. And none of that sounds like any fun. I'm not too thrilled with the United States on a bunch of different levels. I'm ready to move on. So I'm in a state of, I am feeling some fear, but I'm definitely in a state of insecurity. At the same time, it's really exciting because now I'm finally getting to do what I should have done in my 20s. I should have been doing this when I was 25. I should have been just traveling around the world and surfing and all that. So I get to do it now instead. And this is the time. I can't wait. If I'm going to do it, now's the time. I can't wait another 5 years. I can't wait another 10 years, especially because it's about surfing for me. And that's a pretty intense physical sport. So this is it. And so I'm thinking a lot about that, and I'm sitting with my own fears and allowing myself. When I went on this trip to Australia, as I shared in the videos, it was an interesting feeling of being aware of how alone I was. Now, I'm just as alone here right now. This just happens to be where I grew up, and it's my country, and I'm familiar with everything. And so there's this false sense of familiarity. But as somebody that I knew pointed out to me, they said, well, what are you giving up? You don't have any permanency now. You don't have any friends or relationships now. So what are you giving up? What's changing? You'll just be in a different place. You'll have the exact same life in a different place, doing, and enjoying yourself a little bit more. So you're really not losing anything. You're gaining. But it's the idea, it's the awareness that I'm going to be in an impermanent situation, that it'll be difficult to create any lasting relationships. The knowledge that I will be living in a state of aloneness for perhaps years. That's an interesting thing to face. But I see this, I have the ability right now to be able to experience it because the circumstances are stimulating me to be consciously experiencing it. Whereas most of the time, even if we are having that experience, we're not aware of it because we allow the illusion of whatever it is to blind us from that. And my illusion was that even though this was where I grew up and it was my home and I understand it and all that, the illusion was that I had something when in reality I don't. I don't have any permanent relationships of any, nothing. So it's no different. So to take that to your situation when you're thinking about making that change, taking that risk, going after what it is that you love, even though your partner doesn't want you to do it, your spouse doesn't want you to do it, your parents don't want you to do it. The voice in your head says that's stupid, you shouldn't do that. And you let that feeling stop you, and you stay in the illusion of, well, if I do what's practical, if I do what's right, and I've seen people do this and they end up, 10 years, 15, 20 years goes by and nothing in their life has changed. And they're thinking that tomorrow it'll be different, and it won't. The only way your life will change is either you will get old and die, you can't avoid that, or you will have to take some action to make that change in your life. So, that's what I wanted to talk to you about today, and I'll be free to take questions. Let me see if I need to make a speech about the questions here before I go on. Okay, so for those of you who are new to the channel, please leave me your questions. I'd prefer that you refrain from giving out any opinions or sharing anything unless it's a question for me. So if you want to write me a question, put down the word question and then follow it with a well-worded question and I will answer it. All right, so here we go. We are going to now take a break. I'll be back in a couple of minutes. And, for those of you who are just getting on here, I'll show you the video of the guy with the biggest balls in the universe.
Alex Honnold is the foremost free soloist in the world. He has free soloed routes that no one else can. To free solo means to climb without ropes or safety equipment. One false move, one slip, and it's over.
The risk in free soloing is always to fall off and fall to your death. I mean, that's pretty straightforward.
To me, the big dream has always been free soloing El Cap. That is the culmination of anything I can imagine.
El Cap is monumental, 3,000 feet of sheer granite. Free soloing it would be one of the greatest accomplishments in the history of climbing.
Alex was going to do the climb with or without us, but we decided that to be able to live with ourselves filming it, we needed to set certain guidelines. First, Alex's safety was always going to be the priority, and second, we needed to protect the integrity of his experience.
To be able to move forward on this film, the makeup of the crew was critical. They had to be elite professional climbers who understood what Alex was doing. Their interactions with Alex had to be carefully managed, and they had to remain completely neutral about Alex's decision to make or not make the attempt to free solo El Cap. Even though we thought through every scenario carefully, it was still difficult to film Alex.
Misty morning, clouds in the sky. Without warning, a wizard walks by. Casting its shadow, weaving its spell. Long gray clothes, twinkling bell. Never talking, just keeps walking. 'Cause in his magic.
All right, so let's take a look at some questions here. By the way, whenever I put this thing up here, these are all of the, let me see, let me get this, might be hard to see, but make it a little smaller. Hang on 1 second here. Okay, so those are some of the websites for a lot of things, so I recommend that you check them out. I get emails. I'll be talking about astrology readings and what you get in a reading, and I'll usually point up here to astrology.thunderwizard.com, which is not on this one. And then people email me and say, how much is a reading? You know, how many times do I have to show you the website? Go look at the websites and you'll know what it is that we're offering here for you. So let's take a look at some of the questions here, if we have any. Sunshine on Sophia question, do you believe we have multiple lives? And if so, then we don't really die. Thus, isn't fear an illusion? So that's not really a question. You're making a statement. You are making the statement that since we have multiple lives, fear is an illusion. So while that's great that you've come to that realization, you're not really asking me a question. Okay, let's take a look here. What else do we got here? Gert Van Zyl, please write questions so I know you're writing a question and I can differentiate it between the rest of people just typing in whatever they type in. How do you know your personal feelings from fear? Well, fear is fear. Your personal feelings can have fear in them. So, like I said, there's, really all fears are just the fear of death. And we don't realize it, but even when you have this feeling that's bothering you and you want to cover it up by having a drink or having a smoke or you're still trying to avoid the fear of death. It's just you're not as aware of it because we learn how to push these things down. So personal feelings, feelings are feelings. What's the difference between a feeling and a personal feeling? You're thinking this too through, or I'm not understanding your question. I need to understand what you mean by that to be able to answer that. All right. Gert Van Zyl question, I have done what you want to do. Are you sure you want to do that? Why are you asking me that? You're not asking me a question. Ask me a question about something that you need to know for yourself. You did what I've done and didn't work for you, so do I really want to do it? That's not really a question. You want to get into my personal life, this isn't the place to do that. All right, Matt Sweeney's Bear question. What are some of the things chanting our mantra received with a Vedic reading will do and help with fear? Well, it may stimulate your fear. Because the mantra that you get from astrology.thunderwizard.com, the mantra that you get from that most likely is going to be based on what's called the Dharma Devata. So we have 3 planets in the kind of readings that I do. There are 3 planets that have very practical importance in your life. The first one is called the Ishta Devata, which is the planet that wants to communicate with you on an intellectual level. So for instance, mine is Venus. That means that for me to get through my day on a conscious level, I can talk to Venus deities, Venus herself, Lakshmi, Freja. These kinds of deities, because they're Venus deities, work really well for me, Frey, because that is the planet that wants to communicate with me on a conscious level. And then you have the Dharma Devata, which is the planet that wants to help you on the unconscious level. So remember what I said is that when you're 3 and 4 years old and you start to be programmed, the programming goes into your unconscious. Your unconscious is a 4-year-old. So whenever we talk about the unconscious mind is a 4-year-old, which is why it doesn't respond to rationality. You can't do conscious verbal affirmations and have them take hold in your unconscious if your unconscious has a different programming, because a 4-year-old child is not rational. You can't sit a 4-year-old child down and have a rational intellectual discussion with them. They are purely responding to feelings and drives. You can't reason with them. That's why you have to give them boundaries, and you have to do things like, punish them if they have a temper tantrum. You have to show them boundaries, because otherwise they'll never be rational. That's why people who don't have good childhood experiences are usually very irrational, very temperamental, and they just do with whatever happens to them, whatever feeling is driving them. That's because they're still a 4-year-old. So the Dharma Devata is a planet that wants to help you with that. And the way that you activate that planet is by worshiping deities who are associated with that. So each planet has, like Saturn has its own deities, Mars has its own deities. So the Dharma Devata mantra, to answer your question, is a mantra that is designed based on all the specifics of your chart for that particular planet and for you based on your moon sign. There's all kinds of things that go into the mantras that I give. I don't just hand out mantras. I craft very specific mantras with all kinds of different things based on what's in your chart. So to answer your question, how does the mantra that I give you help you with that? It may stimulate your fear. Because when you go in with the mantra of your Dharma Devata, it goes into your unconscious, and it's like a antivirus program. It starts to identify all of the self-sabotaging self-talk that's going on under your conscious awareness, and it starts to take that apart. Now remember, all of your unconscious self-sabotage was created as a strategy to protect you and save your life. So if you're living, this is the Helsinki syndrome. What is that thing? Where captives will start to identify with their captors. This is a self-preservation technique. Because as long as you are an enemy with somebody who's got you captive, then you are in danger. But if you align with them and you get them to accept you as part of their group, then you no longer are in danger. So this is what happens when little kids live with abusive parents who tell them they're no good, they're not lovable. They start to say to themselves, yes, they're no good, they're not lovable. And they do that so that they can align with the parents and be accepted and be safe. So all of your unconscious self-sabotage, all of the false beliefs that you have, all of the false fears were initially adopted by you as a very real, practical self-defense, self-preservation tactic. Now it becomes a problem when you no longer are living with those crazy, fucked up parents who are a threat to you, and you're living in the real world. That's when your life becomes a mess, because you're going off of old information that is not connected to the external reality in front of you. But you can't stop it. It's programmed into you. That's why I'm hammering away at people with victim mentality. The archons are out to get us. These are people, guaranteed, anybody who spends their life talking about the evil archons who want to steal our souls and bring us down and lie to us, I can guarantee you, without a doubt, these are people who had dysfunctional childhoods. Period. End of story. And they adopted this belief that everybody's out to get them because when they were little kids, that was necessary to survive. Now as adults, it's no longer necessary, but they still keep it, and they look for QAnon, and they're looking for all the conspiracies to reinforce to themselves this irrational fear of the universe. And of course, they're miserable. So we all have this to one degree or another, and when we do our mantra to the Dharma Devata, which I can give you at astrology.thunderwizard.com, then what ends up happening is that mantra and that deity associated with that mantra will go into your unconscious mind and start to pull out all of the false information. Now, your unconscious mind is going to resist that. It will fight that because it believes it needs that in order to protect you. And so it starts to flip out. So you may become afraid. In fact, I'm thinking of one person in mind who did their ritual, and the next day they were, in fear and depressed and couldn't function. And so the reason why I'm here, the reason why you need spiritual teachers is for them to point out to you, that's okay. You are releasing old fears. The fear won't kill you. Keep taking the action. Keep doing what you're doing. But instead, what we do is we respond to the feelings and we stop, and we no longer do the ritual, and we go back to what it is that we did that's self-destructive. We stay with the self-destructive partner, or we go back to the drugs and alcohol, or we, don't take action on our whatever it is. So, you're asking me the question as though, again, the assumption of your question is, how do I get rid of the fear? And I'm here to tell you, it's not about getting rid of the fear. It's about taking action regardless, just like the guy on the side of the cliff. If he let his fear overtake him, he would die, for sure. He'd either stay in that one spot until he fell asleep or passed out, and then he would fall to his death. Or he would find a little crevice and stay there and starve to death. But in spite of his fear, he takes action to climb the rest of that mountain. Every time he does that, his life is on the line. He has to climb to the top of that mountain or he will die. It's just such an amazing sport. Same thing with these guys who surf these 80-foot waves. I mean, those waves are, and I'm a surfer, and I love the challenge of surfing, but you would never, ever, ever catch me surfing one of those waves because you're going so fast that if you fall, even if you're not getting hit by the wave, if you fall on the surface of that wave, it's like hitting cement, and you can crush your shoulder, crush your larynx, and crack your head open or whatever. It'll just the fall and hitting the water is enough to kill you. These guys go out and do it, and they keep doing it all the time. They're nuts. Bonkers. Anyway, so it's not about the fear. It's not about avoiding the fear. The only way to overcome the fear is to take action regardless of the feeling. So get used to it. We're such pussies. We're so afraid of the feelings. How can I not be afraid? You can't not be afraid. Same guys that do this kind of free soloing, if you ask them about fear, they'll say, if you don't have fear about doing this, you will die. Your fear is very important. You have to learn to live with it. This is really important. We have to learn to live with our uncomfortable feelings. If we have positive childhood experiences, our parents will have empowered us to do just that. This is why, a good parent, when a child is afraid, instead of saying, oh, stop crying, or don't be so afraid, or don't be such a pussy, or whatever, they might say, they'll give the child a hug and they'll say, yep, it's okay to be afraid, but don't worry, the fear won't kill you. I'm sorry that your friends picked on you. You're still a worthwhile person. We still love you. You keep going back. They reflect back to the child what their true essence is. And when they get empowered with that, then as they become adults, they're able to tolerate being lonely, being angry, being afraid, being sad. And they can still take positive actions, and they can still have constructive relationships. For those of us, if we have difficulty with that, it means that our parents didn't do a good job of taking care of us and teaching us that. And so we have to do it for ourselves. We have to be our own parents. Very difficult, very challenging. This is what spiritual teachers are here to do. This is why it's important to stay in contact, regular contact with your spiritual teacher, because you can't do it yourself. I still have my teacher that I go to every week. And if I end up moving, I'm going to talk to him on the phone every week or through Skype or whatever. I'm not going to do this by myself. Okay, so I hope I answered that question. It's not about the fear. It's about taking action regardless of the fear. All right. Into the Void says, what song is this? It's Black Sabbath. It's called The Wizard. Thunder Wizard, Black. That's why I put it on. Miles Pretty, question. How specific are soul desires? Extremely specific. My soul desire is to surf. It's very specific. If I get really specific, to surf in semi-tropical to tropical, that's why I like Southern California, because it's kind of, it's not quite tropical, but it's warm most of the time, and even in the middle of winter, it can be 80 degrees and beautiful. That's why I live here. Lived here. Does one generally go for the fulfillment of a set of objectives, or does it have more to do with how you want to feel or be? It has to do with how you want to feel. Let's go through this again. So the way to know what your soul desire is, you first forget about everything you think you know. By the way, for those who don't know, you can go look on michaelwilliamdenny.com and look for this book, The Shamanic Secret Commandment to a Perfect Life. Go read that book. That will delineate to you exactly what a soul desire is and how to achieve it. Your soul desire is that when you go into a fantasy, forget about everything you know, forget about having to make money, forget about having to please people. Forget about all that. Go into an irrational fantasy land. A fantasy land means that it doesn't matter how realistic or how silly, you just allow yourself to go there. So don't try and figure anything out. First, just go to this fantasy land. In this fantasy land, you have everything you need, so you don't need money. Everybody loves you, so you don't need to meet your parents or your spouse's approval. The only thing that you're required to do in this fantasy land is the one thing that you can think of that makes you crazy, deliriously happy, regardless of how irrational or silly or impractical it is. If that means being a ballerina, if that means being a surfer, if that means being a rock star, if that means being a bodybuilder, being Mr. Olympia, if it means having 10 heads and 6 wings, whatever it is, if you think about it, it gives you joy. That is your soul desire. And you have to do exactly that. That's what you're here to do. Now, what ends up happening is people once they get jolted out of that, they go, yeah, but I have to make a living, or yeah, but I have to pay for my kids, or yeah, but my parents. This is the challenge. The challenge is that you, regardless of all the real world problems in front of you, you are required by your soul to go after what makes you happy regardless. This is why my ancestors had this belief that people who died in battle went to Valhalla. What they meant by that is that they were willing to die for what they believed in. And they were willing to die for their own personal fulfillment. This is the difference between pre-Christian Europe and Christianity. Christianity came in and said, you can't live for yourself because there's only one God and you're not it, so you can't live for yourself. You can't have pride and go after your own glory. You can only do what God tells you to do, and you must carry your cross, and if it's God's will that you be a leper, or if it's God's will that you live, then you have to do that. This is what Christianity attacked. Its main focus was to destroy you going after your soul desire. Because if you go after your soul desire, nobody can control you. And the whole point of Christianity was to control you so that the elites who had the power could keep you where you were and get you to do what they wanted to do. And they would tell you that you were doing God's will. And if you didn't do God's will, you were a blasphemer and you deserved to die, and they would kill you. They would literally kill you if you went after your soul desire, if your soul desire went against whatever it is that they wanted to do. And they would say you were a witch or a blasphemer, and they would put you to death. So dying in battle means being willing to go after what makes you happy, even if it's going to kill you. I have done that. I mean, when I spent a couple times in my life, I stopped surfing. One of them, I did a marriage experiment, and I moved off to Hawaii, Freudian slip. I moved off to Idaho and got married, and it started slowly killing me. I got physically ill. And when that marriage fell apart with no money and full of physical pain and being physically ill, I came down and I started surfing again. I was totally out of shape, and I'm out there surfing in the winter with these big, waves that are as big as a house. And if I drowned out there, I drowned out there, but I was going to go do what I wanted to do, even if it killed me. And it was the best thing I ever did. I'm in the best physical health of my life. I'm stronger than I've ever been, even at age 55. So I've learned from personal experience what my ancestors taught. If you're willing to die in battle, you go to Valhalla. You don't have to die to go to Valhalla. Valhalla can be right here where you are. So soul desires are very specific. It's what makes you happy. It's just that simple. Does it make you happy? Then go do it. Cosmo Joe, giant blue question mark. This isn't related to fear, but Qigong practice. Qigong.thunderwizard.com if you want to see what kind of Qigong he's talking about. What is your opinion of Dantian rotation? Don't waste your time with it. Cosmo Joe, anything, and I know you like this because you have a very well-developed intellect. Anything that has to do with all that kind of, you just get rid of it. The simpler, the better. Celestial Qigong is incredibly simple. There's no Dantian rotation. You don't even have to do the microcosmic orbit. You just do the breath and the posture, and everything will happen the way it's supposed to. So my opinion of it is it's too complicated. See, here's the thing about this complicated stuff. We're talking about Qigong, which is a Chinese practice, energy work. Now, in the temple, there were, in whatever temple you're at, whether it's Shaolin or whether it was a Taoist temple, there would be what was called inner door practices. And these were the very advanced practices that were taught to the high-level monks who had proven to the, whoever was running that temple that they could be trusted with this high-level information. And then there were what was called outer door practices. Now, most of the people who came to the Taoist temple or the Shaolin temple needed discipline. And the best way to discipline somebody is to give them very complicated instructions. That takes a long time. So if you give somebody this complicated instruction to do this and to breathe like that and to rotate the Dantian and to make this happen and to do that, they can't get into trouble because they're so wrapped up in all of these things. Now, people like that because they think the more complicated something is, the more powerful it is, so it addresses their ego, which is good. So it gives their ego a boost. It makes them think they're in control. So you give them all these complicated things. Now, for the inner door students, the ones who were getting the real stuff, they were getting all the stuff without any of the complicated nonsense. Just hold this posture and breathe. And put your eyes up here and breathe. So all this stuff that you want to look into, Cosmo Joe, rotating the Dantian, doing this and that and the compress, all of that stuff is low-level stuff given to people who need discipline because without it, they might get themselves into trouble or they might not be able to resist doing destructive things to themselves. This is the difference between the right hand and the left hand path. Let me clear up something about the right hand and the left hand path. People think left hand path is about doing secret, evil. It's not. Right hand path is complicated stuff because it deals with the left brain, which is your intellect. Your intellect wants a bunch of things to do because it gives it something to do and it makes it think it's accomplishing something. That's the right-hand path. People who, the 10 Commandments are the extreme example of the right-hand path. Do not steal, do not lust, do not kill, do not lie. The fact that you have to be told to do that means that you lack discipline. So for people who lack discipline or who lack maturity, we have to give them a bunch of rules. That's the right-hand path. The left-hand path says there's no rules, not because you can do whatever the hell you want without any consequences, but because you have an innate understanding. If I steal from that guy, I'm going to have to run around with this feeling inside of me, and all the energy that it's going to take for me to hold on to that is going to take away from my being able to function. Plus, it tells, it gives me the wrong understanding of the universe, because if I have to steal from somebody, that means that I presume I'm not going to get what I need. So that's not good for me. I don't want to steal from him because it doesn't make me feel good. That's the left-hand path. The left-hand path is just do this, face this way. I'm teaching the left-hand path. The celestial qigong is the highest level stuff I know of. I've had people who have, taken qigong and gone into temples and turned from the this and the that, and they do celestial qigong and they write me and they say, I've never experienced anything this powerful in my whole life, and I've been doing high level and I trained with so-and-so. This is the left-hand path. So, Cosmo Joe, I know that you like to think all this stuff through and you constantly have questions about all this stuff, and you can ask me, because that's who you are. But the more that you can just go and do the simple stuff and not think about it, the more you're going to get what you really want, which is that power. Qigong.thunderwizard.com for those of you who want to know what we're talking about. Okay. Kim Montgomery, you need to write question if you're new to the channel. Otherwise, I think you're just somebody coming on writing things down. So I don't know if this is an actual question. I think you're being sarcastic, but let me read the whole thing before I find out whether or not I'm going to block you or not. Did you really just tell people to worship deities from all different planets? Laugh out loud. I thought Christianity was bad. Holy crap. All right, so that's not a question. So we can just mute you because you're not interested. You feel free to go someplace else. This doesn't work for you. Okay? Bye-bye. Gert Van Zyl question, sorry for offending you. You didn't offend me. I don't know why you think you offended me. You never offended me. Questions don't offend me. Especially honest questions. They don't offend me. Sorry for offending you as person. Is it worth going to run from your country? Okay, so you're not asking me a question. Look, this is, for everybody, here is a, what do you call this? Here is an object lesson in projection. So, psychological projection. Let's write this down. Psychological projection. So go look that up if you're not familiar with it. But we do it all the time. Everybody is psychologically projecting all the time. Your world, your reality is your own projection. If you believe you live in a horrible universe where people are out to get you, and that's because that's how you feel internally. You're projecting it into your world. So psychological projection is when we project onto other people what we are personally experiencing. So based on this question, I think this is your projection onto me. So let's explore that. Sorry for offending you. As person, is it worth going to run from your country to start a new life where nobody, now you, the pain will follow you? Ask me, I know. So what you're saying is that you ran away. If you're saying you went to another country, you ran away from your own pain, and you did that by moving to another country, and your pain followed you. So you're right. Wherever you go, there you are. That's absolutely correct. But because you did that for those reasons, you're projecting onto me that I'm making the same decisions for the same reasons that you did. So I support you that it's helpful for you to take a look at what's going on with you. And did you run away? And you're right, there's a difference between running away and making a positive change. Now, we have yet to see. I don't know yet. I'm spending a lot of time, I'm talking with my teacher, I'm talking with my friends. I'm not just making this up and deciding to do it. I've got 7 months to fulfill this. Do I think I'm running away from my country and trying to run away from my pain? No. I think I'm making a positive change in my life, and it's scary and I don't know where it's going. So I would be really interested in talking with you about the pain that you're still living with based on this, that you haven't resolved. So, psychological projection right there. Stockholm Syndrome, somebody puts down, yes, that's what I was trying to say. But, again, and that's not a question. So just be aware that a question is you have an honest question for me because you're trying to work on yourself. and there's something that you need for yourself, and you're asking me so that I can help you. Asking me a question because you're trying to give me advice, that's not asking me a question. I have teachers. If I need your advice, I'll ask you for it. The need to fix or help somebody that has not asked for your help is called unsolicited advice. That's why that I only want people to ask me honest questions, because I don't want to tell you something, if you're not interested in knowing about it. If you want to know about it, ask me, and then I'll tell you, because you're asking for yourself. Okay? So focus on you, I'll focus on me, and if there's something that you think I can help you with, ask me, and I'll be happy to help you. All right. Gremnor Thomas, question. Been listening to Michael Harner, 30-minute drumming, attempting to contact my spirit teacher, but have been unsuccessful. Do you have any advice to help me connect with my spirit teacher? Yes, I do. In fact, I had this conversation with one of my students. So we have to go back and understand what shamanic journeying is about and what the point of it is. Shamanic journeying is a tool that was discovered by our ancient ancestors to solve a very real problem. And there's a tribe in Alaska that still has the knowledge of when we started to learn how to do this. And so imagine this primitive tribe who's, doesn't have access to science or whatever, however many, 100 years ago or whenever it was that this information that I'm sharing was given to a white person. The way I remember it was that they said that human beings used to dig in the ground and eat roots, which is true. Pre-humans, proto-humans, we're talking millions of years ago, before we became hunter-gatherers, we were these apes, and that's what we would do. We would dig and eat grubs and roots and stuff out of the ground, and then we graduated to becoming scavengers. When there was a dead carcass, we would eat that. We would eat the bones. We would eat get the protein and stuff out of the bones. And the reason why we have such large brains is because we started eating meat. And so we became hunters. The reason why we began eating meat is because we needed the protein and the calories to be able to think. Our brains need a huge amount of calories and protein. I mean, we burn tons of calories just by thinking. And so we needed meat in order to do that. And that's why human beings evolved to start eating meat. Now, in order to eat large amounts of meat, we had to cook it. And that's why we needed to discover fire, so that we could cook the meat. And with the ability of hunting and cooking meat, our brains began to grow and grow and grow until we are the way we are now. So these guys were saying that way back in the past, according to their understanding, human beings ate out of the ground, and then they started hunting. And in order to be able to follow the herds of animals, they needed a shaman. So the first thing that started happening is that they were eating animals, and they became aware that these animals had spirits. Now, they weren't religious. They weren't spiritual. They were just doing their thing, surviving in the world like all other animals. Religion came out of the experience of the animal spirits that they were experiencing. And so they needed a shaman to communicate with that, and they needed a shaman to tell them where the animals were. So when you're starving and you're hungry and you don't know where your next meal is going to come from, the shaman would go into trance, and he would come back out of his trance and he would say, there's animals on the other side of that ridge over there. So the point is that there was a desperate need. Without the need, we wouldn't figure out how to do shamanic journey. So a spirit animal is extremely important if you need to shamanic journey in order to survive. If you're doing shamanism and shamanic journeying for entertainment only, I have nothing against it. Keep doing it. I'm not saying to stop. But just be aware that wanting to be entertained or wanting to, again, be taken out of your feelings, or wanting something new, or wanting to have an experience without having a driving need for that tool, it won't mean anything. You know, surfing is a good example. Surfing is not easy to learn. You can't just get on a surfboard and go out in, 5-6 foot waves and learn how to surf. You will give up very quickly. It's very hard to do. Everything about it, you have to really put a lot of effort into training yourself. So the desire, the strong desire to surf that wave has to be there. Otherwise, trust me, you won't do it. So shamanism is the same. If you're doing shamanic rituals and you're doing shamanic journeying and you're not finding your spirit animal, it's because you don't have a reason. When you are a shaman and you have to figure out where the game is, because if you don't, you will starve, you then have a very strong need to find a spirit guide who will help you in your journeys. If you don't have that need, it won't happen. So that tells me that, I don't know your motivations. I'm not saying to do it or to not do it, but I'm saying that it's probably not coming from a deep need within you. You're probably doing it to have an experience. Maybe you're curious. Maybe you're doing it because you want to escape. So many people get involved. This is why people take power plants. This is why people take drugs. And they call it shamanism. Because they don't have the ability within themselves to go into a shamanic trance and have that experience. They want it forced upon them. And they do it to avoid their feelings. This is why you've got so many people out there calling themselves shamans that really all they're doing is they're just taking drugs and tripping out. And if that's what you want to do, great, go ahead and do it. But don't look me in the face and tell me it's shamanism. I do shamanic journeys. I don't do them all the time. And I am unsuccessful in many of my journeys. But the times that I have taken journeys because there was a burning question within me that I needed answered, sometimes for my physical health, the whole breath, for those that don't know what it is, go look this up. The whole breath came out of an intense physical need because my energy was really screwed up because I was experimenting and doing a lot of different things and I had caused myself some energy sickness. And I needed something to balance me. So I had a very strong need, and I just closed my eyes and I said, anybody out there that can help me, I need a very specific sound and a meditation, and something came to me. But if you're doing it just for the sake of doing it, probably nothing's going to happen. So I don't know you well enough to know, but if you're not finding your spirit guide, don't force it. It means you don't need one. Ask yourself, why are you doing this? Are you doing it to have fun, to have an experience, because you're supposed to? You're lonely, you're bored. None of those are good enough reasons to give you a shamanic experience. And again, I'm not saying to do it or not do it. If you want to do it every day, go for it. I'm not telling you to not do it. But that's probably why you're unsuccessful. Gert Van Zyl, question, why don't you face your fear? Gert, stop asking me questions about me. You're not my teacher. I haven't asked for your help. This is about you. If you have this need to try and talk me out of this, it's because you are struggling with your own issues in this regard. So don't ask me that question. Ask yourself that question. Why don't you face your fears here? And why don't you do it? If you have an honest question for me, ask. Otherwise, again, unsolicited advice is abuse. And it's abusive to me for you to want to force your deal onto me. I'm not asking for your help. Okay? If you want my help, I'll help you. But if you want to try and psychoanalyze me, I have my own psychoanalyst who can do that, and I pay him for that. Okay? Okay. Una Veluspa, please write the word question so I know you're asking a question. What format does the astrology reading come in? It does what it is that I will give you notes. I will give you notes in an email, and we will, depending on where you live, I will either give you the reading over the phone, or if you're in another country, I will give it to you through Skype. In rare instances, I will put it on a video if we can't align our schedules, and then I'll give you a link, and you can watch the video and read the notes. Astrology.thunderwizard.com. Yeah, so Gert, I'm going to do this because I'm getting tired of this. I'm getting tired of you trying to, project your stuff onto me. So I'm going to put you in a timeout. I'm not interested in, you're not my student as far as I know, and you're not my teacher. So we're done for the time being. Okay, let's keep going here. Let's see, where were we? Sorry, I'm looking for the question. See, this is why I ask you not to put anything other than questions, because then I have to scroll through all the other stuff. Isis Blackfeather question: have you ever had an epiphany that helped guide your path while helping to guide someone else's? Every time. Every time I teach, I am teaching myself. So this is how the teacher-student relationship works. This is important to know because you may be called to be a teacher. I was talking earlier about, I got into it with somebody who was leaving some comments on my channel. And what I ended up saying to that person was that, they were attacking me personally for who knows whatever reason. And I said, what I see in you is I see that you're a healer and a teacher. And you need to be teaching. And I suspect, based on the aggressiveness and the defensiveness and the personal attacks, I suspect that you are not openly teaching and healing. Because what happens is whatever your gift is, if you have a gift for teaching, let's just use that. If somebody has a gift for teaching and they're not teaching, what will end up happening is that they'll troll YouTube. And they will want to criticize teachers and tell them where they're wrong. And it will always be aggressive and it will always be destructive. How do I know that? Because that's what happens to me. When I'm not doing my job, that's what happens. So if you find yourself angry at a teacher, if you find yourself, let's say you're a musician, you have a gift for music. If you're scrolling or listening to the radio and you're bad-mouthing that one and they suck, and maybe you're right, they're no good at this, it means that you're not doing your gift. So, again, this was years ago. How many years ago it was? 30 years ago, 35, 40 years ago. I remember going to a famous comedy club, and all these famous comedians were up there, and I left bagging on all of them. They weren't this, and they were that, and I stopped, and I said, hang on. I need to put my money where my mouth is. Why don't I go become a comedian and see how easy it is? And I did, and I was very successful, and I could have made a career out of it. And I didn't. I sabotaged it, but I was happy. I no longer went around making fun of people. Same thing with filmmaking. I was an actor, and then I would, I couldn't go to films because they didn't do this and the director didn't do that. And I said, maybe I should make a film. So I made some films completely on my own. And when I was done with that, I do not criticize filmmakers anymore because now I know how hard it is. It's hard work. And if you're able to get anything to work on film, my hat's off to you. So every time I help somebody, this is to answer your question, every time that I help somebody, it's an excuse for the universe to tell me what I need to know. Telling that person that I think that you're a frustrated teacher, you should go teach instead of spending your time trying to fight with me. That's me reminding myself that I need to be teaching. Now, I haven't been teaching in 2 weeks. So, that stuff kind of builds up. And I didn't bring my work with me, and that was a mistake. I shouldn't have done that. I should have brought a laptop, and I should have been doing my videos while I was on vacation. I didn't do that. So now I know, So yes, every single time I teach, I have epiphanies. Sometimes I don't even know what I'm teaching. And I'll go back and I'll watch and I'll listen to myself and I go, oh my God, I didn't know I knew that. And I'm listening to myself and I'm being, because it's not me, it's my guides working through me. So if you are a teacher, there are guides that teach through you. If you are a musician, a painter, a counselor, I don't care what it is that you do, there are guides whose energy is coming through you and you are always empowered. And you always learn. And I have epiphanies because of, there are some students I have that ask me such amazing questions that I have to sit and think, and the answers that come to me blow my mind. I've never even thought of those kinds of things before because of the questions that are asked to me. So I have epiphanies all the time based on that. Okay, so let's see here. Where else are we going? Cosmo Joe, giant blue question mark. On regular practice, cool breath, microcosmic orbit, Dantian breathing, I have become aware of a specific channel that has blockages in it. Do you recommend general practice or specific focus on it? I recommend general practice. You know, because again, the issue that I see with you, and I could be wrong, but what I see is that you overthink things. So the more you overthink things, it's like micro-focusing, and that micro-focusing will create a blockage in and of itself. If you are doing your practice and you are becoming conscious of your unconscious emotions and you are taking action, just like eating healthy or exercising, you will unclog those things just by doing the practice itself. And sometimes these blockages may or may not be real. They may be, things that your intellect has created to distract you. So I'm not saying that there aren't cases where you need to do specific special help. Like sometimes you need to go to a doctor for something. There might be something, but for the most part, I would just do the work. And for you especially, don't overthink it. And it should work itself out, unless you're doing something wrong. Brian Gertson, question: how do you like to spend your evenings when you're not doing these Q&As? I like going to the gym. Sometimes one of the reasons I go to the gym is because it makes me so tired I can't do anything, and then I sleep really well. Otherwise, I might only sleep 3 or 4 hours because my brain won't stop. So I like to do things that physically challenge me. I like to watch, Netflix. When I'm in a relationship, I like to spend my off time with my partner if I have one. When I'm alone like this, then I may spend my time doing some work or trying to figure out what project to do next, or I might think about my next book. Or right now I'm obsessing on where I want to spend 90 days at a time for the next few years. Do I want to go to Tahiti? Do I want to go to American Samoa? Where do I want to be spending my time? That's what I'm doing now. And then when I've gone to the gym and I've worked out so hard that I can't really function, then I'll sit and just, like everybody else, I'll watch Netflix. Meditate, Qigong. Ghost in the Machine, question: would the first generation to be aware of the animal spirit also be the first interaction with the Waynes? I don't know. Good question. I don't know the answer to that question. So, if I don't know, I don't know. Isis Blackfeather, question: do you know of a ritual using rage as a focus for path clearing obstacles, and is it unwise to use such negative emotions? So Isis Blackfeather, have you had a reading from me, an astrological reading? Because it sounds like you have rage, which is fine. I have nothing against people having whatever feelings they have. I've had rage numerous times in my life. You're asking me, you're having difficulty knowing what to do with your rage. Should you use it? Should you face it? Should you push it away? So my answer to that question is I would need to see what it is that you need to do. Your chart will tell me that. If, for instance, I do have anger issues. I have had anger issues my whole life. And Mars is a planet that is my friend. So when I work with Mars, and when I do Mars-related activity, I go on and lift a lot of weights, or practice martial arts, or go surf big waves, or ride my bike really hard, or that's Mars too, really intense physical. When I do that, I channel my rage. I'm able to work through it, and it's very healing for me. For some people, depending on their chart, Mars would be the wrong planet to be working with. Mars may be causing them problems. They need to work with Venus, or they need to work with Saturn, discipline, or they need to work with Jupiter, spirituality. I don't know what you need. So is it a good idea to use rage? It might be. It might not be. But what I hear in your question is that you don't know what to do with it, which tells me that you need some advice. You need to have somebody that you can bounce things off of. I don't think that you're qualified in and of yourself to figure out what to do, other than I hear that you have a lot of rage. So if you want, you can get a session with me just to talk. Whoops. career.thunderwizard.com. If you want to just talk with me, you can. If you want to get a reading from me, astrology.thunderwizard.com. Other than that, if I were to give you a specific answer, because I don't know what is going to best help you, I might be hurting you. I don't know what you need. I need more information. And I don't think I can get that from these questions. Okay, so if I can help you, I will. Otherwise, I hope you find what you need to work that out. Okay. Lisa Langley, please write the word question before your question so I know you're asking me a question. Why am I sometimes able to see auras and other times I can't? I don't know. My response to you is, don't think about it. If you're supposed to be able to see an aura, you'll see it. And if you're not, why do you need? Who cares? Are you trying to see auras because it's an experience, like people taking drugs so that they can trip out? People use their gifts, their spiritual gifts, like oftentimes like people use drugs. They try to escape with it. So if you're trying to look at auras when it's not in the moment something that you need or that they need, I think it might be a distraction. Just who cares? You see, here's the thing about spiritual gifts. So let's say the gift of healing. I've shared this before. A lot of people will think that they're spiritually enlightened because they have the gift of healing. Not at all. Every spiritual gift that comes up, you can see auras, you get messages from the universe, you have wisdom, you have healing. Whatever your spiritual gift is, it means that's a karmic block. So in terms of healing, if somebody has a healing gift, like they can put their hands on somebody and heal them, it means in previous lifetimes they harmed people. And their gift of healing is actually balancing out karmas that they've had. So even though in this life, because the universe is a kind universe, it doesn't punish us for our past misdeeds while it's forcing us to balance things out. You have this experience of joy of, I love healing people, and people come from all over the world and line up, and you put your hands on hundreds of people. Guess what? Each one of those people that you healed was somebody you harmed in a past life. And the universe has created a way for you to balance that out in a way that gives you pleasure and makes you feel good and makes them feel good. It doesn't mean you're spiritually advanced. So the fact that you see auras doesn't mean anything. If you interact with people and you see their aura, it's because you're supposed to help them, and that's somebody that you have a karmic imbalance with, and by sharing with them, don't do it without their permission. This is why you should charge. If you have a gift of seeing auras, you need to be charging people money. I can see in your aura what you need, whatever it is. I don't know what word they call that. You need to be charging somebody. Otherwise, you're going to be going around telling people what you see in their auras when they haven't asked, and you will be doing damage. You will be like the woman on here who had this need. She had to start telling me what was going on and psychoanalyzing me for wanting to leave the U.S. That's her issue that she needs to go talk to a counselor about. But because she's not doing it, she needs to force it onto me, even though I'm not asking for her help. So if you've got the ability to see auras and you go around telling people what you see in their auras, you're not helping them, you're hurting them. What you need to do is start charging people. Charge people $50, $100 an hour. And the people who you karmically have a connection with to help them, they will come and give you money so that you can look at their aura and tell them what they need. Then you will balance out your past dysfunction that you had with them in a previous life. So who cares whether you can or can't see auras or when you can or you can't? It doesn't matter. Why? Because you're not supposed to. Okay, I'm only responding because I hear the assumption in that question that you should be able to do it whenever you want and that it's a spiritual gift. And all spiritual gifts are, like I said, just ways for you to balance out your own karma with other people. A truly spiritually enlightened person, like somebody who's completely 100% totally enlightened, if there is such a thing, will have zero spiritual gifts. Or if they do, they won't use them because they'll know that. Those of us, we have our gifts and our experiences and we think we're experiencing something. That's our ego. Nothing wrong with it. Enjoy it. You should enjoy them. Your spiritual gifts are there for you to enjoy. Enjoy them. But just know that they don't have any meaning in and of themselves. Any more than having, big arms means anything. It just means you went to the gym and lifted weights. That's it. Okay. More questions. Let's keep going. Ghost in the Machine question, missed earlier. Does fear distort our intuition? Of course. Such as messages from our three selves? Yes, of course fear distorts your intuition. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't have fear. I mean, if you're standing in the middle of the road and a car is coming at you, you should be afraid of that. But if we're talking about you're sitting in your room and you're afraid of taking action, yeah, absolutely. Short answer, yes. Dharma Child question, beyond the concept, are fear and love the same power? No. That is a new age ism that superficializes and spiritualizes things. I understand what people are saying. You're either in fear or you're in love. That's true. But what they mean by that is that you're either following your soul desire or you're resisting it. Fear is one of the emotions that we experience when we are in conflict of our soul desire. So fear and love aren't the same thing. Love, I'll change it from love to joy. I will say there's only one true emotion in the universe, and that is joy. Love is contained within joy. And joy doesn't necessarily mean being giddy happy because I just snorted some coke. It means that I'm following my soul desire and it gives me true deep satisfaction. And sometimes it's difficult because the fear comes up because we are in conflict. And so sometimes it's hard for us to see. And sometimes when listen to what I'm saying and remember what I'm saying and apply it. Because it is one of the most profound experiences and understandings I've had. And I've seen this. I'm able to see it. People who are in it can't see it, but I can see it when I'm working with clients, especially if I'm working with them to help them find their soul desire. When they don't know that they're not supposed to go down this road and I take them down a road to help them find their soul desire, they will be overcome with joy and happiness and giddiness, and then the resistance will kick in and they'll get afraid and then they'll talk themselves out of it and they won't remember the joy. And all they want to talk about is why they can't do it and what's wrong with that and why I need to do this. And I'll say, wait, we just talked about it. Yeah, I know I said that, but what's really going on? And they're not aware that what they're doing is they're just running away from the uncomfortable feelings. So the epiphany that happens when you become aware of what your soul desire is, you will have an experience of power, you will have an epiphany, and you will have, even if it's just for a split second, you'll have an experience of, I can do it, I can do anything. That's your soul talking. Then your unconscious mind kicks in and clouds over it, and then you can't do it because it's not practical, or you need the money, or the blah, 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 and then you're wrapped up and you don't remember. What's supposed to happen is when you have the epiphany, you write down, I am supposed to spend the rest of my life surfing. Because you know that the resistance will come. When the resistance kicks in, and you're too afraid and you can't do this, you have the little plaque that says, my life is about surfing. You go and do it. You assume, I'll just tell you this, just assume that when you find out what your soul desire is, just assume that at some point after that, maybe immediately after that, you will experience fear and doubt and confusion, and that will be the norm. Just like the guy who is on the side of the mountain. What he is experiencing more often than not is his body telling him, I'm about to die. We need to get off this mountain. But he can't. He's on the side of a 3,000-foot mountain. And so he has to have the discipline to remind himself, just look for the next handhold, just look for the next. And the same is true for us. When we know what our soul desire is, expect. sitting on the ground, looking up at the mountain and saying, oh, I can do that if I just follow that route, and you have the confidence and you know you can do it. And then you start climbing it, and then all of a sudden, the fear of heights kicks in and you don't know what you're doing. There's only one thing left that you can do. Remember that you had the confidence. And remember what your strategy was. And keep doing it regardless of the fear. Keep doing it regardless of the fear. So let's see. I think I was responding to a question here. Let's get back. Was I responding to? Yeah. The concept of fear and love being the same power. Again, to me, that's a new age superficial ism that I think when I make this face and I talk about new age, whatever, it's because I find that all of those things really are things that people create or attach themselves to because they distract us. They're really trying to distract us. They spiritualize, our failings. Like, here's one. And I'm not talking about one particular person. I've talked to many people who have brought this up. So in case anybody out there thinks I'm singling them out, I'm not trying to do that. There's a phrase out there that's really popular in the New Age-ism, which is called twin flames. Now, I thought when people started talking about twin flames, I thought they were talking about soulmates, which I have experienced. And I thought but that's not what they mean. Twin flames is just a spiritualization of a dysfunctional relationship. And people will talk about your twin flame as this karmic person you've come to, and he or she mirrors your worst internal this, and you end up hurting each other, but it's because you have this bullshit. It is a dysfunctional relationship. You are in a dysfunctional relationship because you are avoiding your true path. And you spiritualize it by saying we are meant to be together. That's one. But when I make that face whenever I talk about New Age isms, that because they do that, they spiritualize this dysfunction and they minimize things. Here's another one, shadow self. I hate that word. I hate that phrase. Well, I have to do my shadow work. Why do you have to talk about it like that? That within it has this assumption that it's bad, but we're making it good, right? There's no such thing as shadow work. There's just feelings. And to categorize some feelings as shadow work, pain, sadness, anger, as shadow work, it minimizes and trivializes your human experience. All of these negative feelings are things we are supposed to feel. Human beings are supposed to feel them. There's nothing shadow about them. When I'm in a relationship with a woman, if she is able to own her feelings, regardless of how negative, I will be so turned on. Like, for instance, if I'm with a woman who can look me in the face and say, I'm feeling really rageful at you right now, I will hug her. I will love that she has the ability to communicate that. There's no need for us to go, well, let's go into the shadow work and look at your rage. Feelings are just feelings. And trivializing things and minimizing things is why I get this when, So anyways, I'm not trying to attack you because this is something that a lot of people are doing, but that's my reaction to that. So no, I don't think love and fear are the same energy. I don't think that. Anyway, enough of that question. All right, so Gremnor Thomas question, how does one surrender to the universe? That's a huge question. What do you mean how? You just do. You just do. You live in each moment realizing that you surrender. The thing about power is this. This is one of the things that, what's his name? Castaneda was brilliant at. He himself was a fraud, but he wrote some very brilliantly channeled messages. And I don't know if he picked it up from somebody else. He probably did. But, he talks about power, and he says, the way to power is that it's ironic because on the one hand, you have to surrender to the power to control it. So the only way you can control power is by surrendering to it. So you can't control something that you're surrendering to. But when you do surrender to it, it allows itself to be controlled by you. And so you have this experience that you're controlling power, and the moment that you think you're in control, all of a sudden you lose it. So surrendering to the universe first, if you can get specific, that helps me a lot. But in general, the way to surrender to the universe is to constantly be in surrender. Constantly be vulnerable. Constantly be aware that death is with you at all times, that death is your greatest advisor. The guy on the side of the mountain, death is the thing that's going to help him get to the top, because his awareness of, if I step there, I'm going to die, is really important. He has to not be so wrapped up in his fear that he can distinguish between which handhold is going to help him and which one won't. John Burnham question. Speaking of Mike Harner, what importance would you give to the differences between theta waves and theta state? I don't even know anything about that. I can't give any importance to it because I don't even think like that. I could care less. Look, there's no difference between any state. It's all spiritual. The idea that there's one state of being that is more spiritual, again, I get this look on my face when people want to talk about doing, what is that? Astral travel. That's such a charged word, that I astral traveled last night, and it's such nonsense. I mean, you go into these, the new agey sites, and people want to talk about I'm a this and a that, and I channel this, and I astral travel. Who gives a crap? There's nothing more or less spiritual about any state of being. The dream state, the conscious state, the semi-conscious state, they are all states of being, and they are all equally as spiritual as the other. So the idea that you're spiritual because you go into some other altered state of consciousness doesn't mean that at all. Just like in the conscious state, you are just as apt to be wrapped up in your own narcissistic weirdness. You have two people in conscious state, and one of them's crazy and one of them's sane. They're both conscious. So their state of being conscious has nothing to do with their ability to understand truth. The same is true in the other states. You can be in a theta state or a zeta or an alpha or a beta or the qua, whatever word you want to use. You can still be in a state of illusion. You can still be wrapped up in your own narcissism. You can still be wrapped up in your own fear. None of those states mean anything any more than any other state. Shamanism is, some people will say it's the ability to go into altered states of consciousness. So fucking what? I can smoke weed right now. That'll put me in an altered state of consciousness. Doesn't mean that it'll give me any more truth than being consciously aware. So in terms of that, I don't know anything about theta brainwaves or thetas. I could care less. I don't know anything about it because it doesn't mean anything. Anyway, he goes on to say, I had the worst experience of dreams and time loops after meditating on this. So then stop meditating on it. Doesn't matter. Okay, Gert. So I gave you a timeout because I wanted you to only ask honest questions. You're not doing that. You're coming on and you can't discipline yourself to not just come in. And so I'll put you on another timeout. If you want to interact with me, write question with an honest question. Please don't put anything else, otherwise I'll block you. Okay? All right. Arbitral explorations. Question. What if our personal joy changes from time to time, and it's hard to narrow down on one thing to create a side income? Okay, so you got multiple things going on there. First off, let me say, generally speaking, your soul desire may change throughout your life. I first started out, I can say that one of my first honest soul desires was to become an actor. And I pursued that for, 10 years or something like that. And then it shifted. Throughout my whole life, by the way, I've been a surfer. And the one thing that has never changed in my life is that I've loved surfing. So if I look at that, I can say maybe there's only one soul desire. But throughout our life we do change. Usually what happens, astrologically speaking, is that before we get to the age of 35, we bounce around to things and we're figuring ourselves out. So sometimes we do things we think are what we want to do and we later find out that they're not. So you really don't know who you are until after the age of 35. So your joy may change from time to time until after that. And then you talk about income. So it's hard to narrow down to one thing to create a side income. So this is another big problem that comes to this. When I start to talk to people about this, when they come to me for career consultation, and I take them down the road of let's look at your fantasy, and I'll say, what is your fantasy? They'll say, well, if I did this, I could do this for money, and I have to stop and say, we're not talking about money right now. We're only talking about what makes you happy. So if you're trying to, before you know what your true soul desire is, you're already trying to figure out how to turn that into income, you're still in the wrong mindset. You're still operating from fear of I won't have enough money, so I need to figure that out. Or you're still operating from your parents who said, well, you got to be practical and you got to have a side thing because if, yeah, sure, you can be a painter, but you should probably become a doctor so that you have and then you can paint in your spare time. That's the kind of stuff my parents would say. But that operates from the assumption that the universe is not going to give you money if you don't, if you follow your true path, you won't make money. So forget about the side income thing. The side income thing right now, if you don't know what your soul desire is, the side income won't serve you. That will distract you. My soul desire is to surf. Now, I'm not a professional surfer, so I don't make money every time I go into the water. However, when I go surfing and I come out and I'm full of joy, I'm much more creative, and my sole purpose, which is what I'm doing right now, I then am blessed and it works and I make money. And then the money I make doing this, going back to Gert who wants to talk me out of what I'm doing, listen to this. If I wasn't experiencing where I was at, what is coming for me is I'm going to be spending my whole life surfing different places in the world, and I will be bringing it with me the size of a laptop, my business. And when I'm done surfing Tahiti or Australia or New Zealand or wherever it is that I'm surfing, and after I've gotten my massage and I'm back home, I will flip open my laptop and I will click record and I will type a book or I will talk to you and I will get money. Your soul desire will bring money to you. I'm on the verge, I think, of some of my most creative stuff that I've ever done, and I won't know what that is until I jump off the cliff. To answer Gert, she's so intent on talking me out of that. There's nothing preventing me from getting on a plane and coming back to California and staying here. So jumping off that cliff and taking that risk, I think the bottom line with Gert is that she's struggling with her own fear. She doesn't want to jump off the cliff and take the risk for her own satisfaction. So she wants to project that onto me. She wants to talk me out of doing what I'm doing. Anyway, your personal joy could change from time to time, but based on your question, I think you probably are in conflict with it and you haven't narrowed it down yet. Because once you know what it is, you know what it is. Okay? So if you want my help, if I haven't already worked with you, you can go and I can help you. I can usually help people within an hour figure out exactly what their soul desire is. Whether or not you're going to follow through and do it, that's your business. But I'm pretty good at that, and I feel pretty confident. I'll give myself a 95% accuracy rate on that. Might be 100, but might as well give myself leeway to make a mistake. Okay, John Koichi, question. Do you agree with vibrational astrology? How can I agree with it? I don't know what the hell it is. Ask me about what I teach. Again, don't ask me about other teachers. Don't ask me about other teachings. It's disrespectful to me. It's distracting to you. Ask me about what I teach. If you don't know what I teach, watch my videos, read my books, go to all of these things here. Let's see, where else should you be going? Go to michaelwilliamdenny.com, find out all that I teach. If you want to be certified by me, like if you want to do the astrology that I teach, and you want to make money doing it, and if you want to work under me, go to astrologycertification.thunderwizard.com. If you want to become rune certified, go to runecertification.thunderwizard.com. Go to career.thunderwizard.com if you want a private session with me about anything. By the way, a lot of people don't know the difference between a career consultation and an astrology reading. People get astrology readings from me and then they say, tell me what my soul desire is. And I've said, well, you have to pick. Do you want an astrology reading or do you want me to help you analyze your soul desire? Those are two different readings. michaelwilliamdenny.com is where all my books are. Transformation.thunderwizard.com is a good one. That will give you a rune reading, an astrology reading, and a North Star astrological reading. Those are all really good, which can be very transformative. All right, so let's take a look at some more questions here. Okay, I don't see any more. John Koichi. Please only ask me a question. I'm not interested in the editorial comments. I'm going to start clamping down on that. If people don't have the discipline to avoid giving all kinds of stuff, I'm going to, I'll put you on hold, and then if you become a problem, I'll just block you altogether. So John, stick to the questions. The rest of it, we don't need. All right, let's move on. I'll take a break. We'll come back. If there are any more questions, I'll answer them. If not, we will call it an evening. So be right back.
Misty morning, clouds in the sky. Without warning, a wizard walks by. Casting its shadow, weaving a spell. Long gray cloak, twinkling bell. Never talking, just keeps walking. 'Cause in his magic, evil power disappears. Demons worry when the wizard is near. He turns tears into joy. Everyone's happy when the wizard walks by. Never talking, just keep walking. 'Cause in his magic, sun is shining, got to come by. All the people.
All right. All right. So I guess I figured I'm done because I took off all of my costume here. But I do see that there's one more question left. So let me get to that. Ghost in the Machine asks, When you surrender to the universe, how does that affect our relationship with weird? Weird is, I won't get into it, but it is the ancient Germanic understanding of threefold destiny. How our beliefs, our actions, our beliefs and our actions, how they create our reality. We have the past, we have the present and the future. The present creates the past, which tells us what we have to live through, our debt, our karma. They had the same word, they called it debt. So you're asking me, when you surrender to the universe, how does that affect our relationship with the weird? Well, that is, when you surrender to the universe, it allows you to be in the present moment, because you can't be surrendered and be thinking about the future or thinking about the past. You can't be resentful because of what somebody did to you or worried about what's going to happen. You're not in the present moment if you're doing that. In the present moment, you are just in the present moment. Again, this is another thing that's exciting me about what I'm going to do, because I will be forced to live in the present. I will be aware that wherever I end up, I will be limited to 90 days to experience that place, which means I'm going to be really aware of my surroundings and I'll be really enjoying whatever it is that I'm doing. And that's living in the present, and that's being surrendered in the moment. When you do that, then what ends up happening is that you are able to take actions and adopt beliefs and create assumptions that align you to your soul. So the more that you're able to live in the present moment, the more you are able to operate after your joy, regardless of the consequences. And so how it affects your weird is it helps you to, operate from your greatest, your highest destiny. That's what surrender will do for you. John Burnham, better question. As Seth puts it, what would be a way to harness the awareness of walking into a hypnosis video that you recommended? What? What would be a way to harness the awareness of walking into a hypnosis video? I'm not sure I understand your question, but it sounds very forced. You don't have to harness anything. Just be in the moment. Surrendering means not having to harness anything. Harness is you're trying to control an animal, right? So if here's the thing about horses. Really well-trained horses, you don't have to tell them where to go. You just sit on the horse and you think about where you want to go. And if the horse is trained well, it'll just start walking in the direction you're thinking of. Now, we could say that it's because the horse and horses are a symbol. This is why the Ehwaj rune, The Ehwaj rune represents surrender to the universe. It represents shamanic intuition. Because the horse, when it trusts its rider, has the ability to intuit what the rider wants to do. Now, we could say that the horse is also very sensitive, because even though you're sitting on the horse and you're not pulling on its reins, you're thinking about going right, your body tenses up imperceptibly and the horse feels that and responds to that. So if you are surrendered, the universe will be able to point you in the direction of your soul. Your soul will be able to point you in the direction of where you want to go. Your experience will be that you will be vulnerable and that you will be surrendered. The idea of harnessing sounds harsh and sounds like you're trying too hard and is going against the whole idea of surrendering. It could be just me, my reaction to that word, but I don't know that you need to figure all that out. Just right now, just surrender. Cosmo Joe question, when practicing, sometimes I'll experience a white flash and a rush of energy. Is this chi or shen? Who cares? What difference does it make? If I say to you it's chi, how does that help you? If I say to you it's shen, how does that help you? Are you having a Are you making a judgment as to Shen is better than Qi? Who cares? It might just be simply your nerves responding to the energy. A flash in front of your eyes could be, just an electrical discharge in your brain. It doesn't have to mean anything. But you said just out of curiosity. I wouldn't worry about it. It's just an experience. It's just... Okay, that's it. I don't see any more questions. I've been on for over 2 hours. I don't want to waste any more of your time. And I want to go relax because I'm tired. Because I worked legs yesterday. So I'm really tired. Need to go restore my energy. So that's it for me, guys. Thanks. Welcome back to me. Yay, welcome home, at least for the time being. I will continue to be sharing with you what's happening with me and what I'm going through. I will continue to share with you my feelings, whether they be fearful or whether they be excited. I'll share with you as I go. You guys get to vicariously come with me. Of course, it won't be for another 6 or 7 months before I leave, but I'll be talking to you about, just the idea of not having anything, not having a home, not having a car, not having, the only thing that really will keep me here in the U.S. is that I will have a bank account and my money will be, no matter where I am in the world, will be going into my bank account. And I will be, as I wasn't using cash. I'll just continue to use my debit card everywhere I go. It's an amazing time. No other time in my life that I can remember have we been able to kind of function like this. It's really interesting. Okay, so that's it. I'll talk to you guys probably tomorrow and or the next day. Yeah, there it is. All right, my friends, thank you so very much. I look forward to our next interaction.
Misty morning, clouds in the sky. Without warning, a wizard walks by. Casting its shadow, weaving a spell. Some great cloud, twinkling bell. Never talking, just keeps walking. 'Cause in his magic. Evil power disappears. Demons worry when the wizard is near. He turns tears into joy. Everyone's happy when the wizard walks by. Never talking, just keep walking. Trusting his magic. Sun is shining, time to come by. All the people. Misty morning, clouds in the sky. Without warning, a wizard walks by. Casting its shadow, weaving a spell. never talk.